It's important that we're starting the year like this. European and American allies, side by side with President Zelensky, standing for peace. And we are closer to that goal than ever. But of course, the hardest yards are still ahead. So we're here today to keep driving that effort forward. And we've had a very constructive meeting, which is built on the excellent progress made in negotiations over recent days and weeks. The purpose of the Coalition of the Willing is to help deliver a peace that can last and to work with the US to guarantee Ukraine's security for the long term. This work is now more advanced than ever. Today's joint declaration set that out in clear terms. On top of that, and alongside President Zelensky and President Macron, we went even further today. We signed a declaration of intent on the deployment of forces to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. This is a vital part of our ironcast commitment to stand with Ukraine for the long term. It paves the way for the legal framework under which British, French and partner forces could operate on Ukrainian soil, securing Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerating Ukraine's armed forces for the future. We discussed these issues in detail today, and so I can say that following a ceasefire, the UK and France will establish military hubs across Ukraine and build protected facilities for weapons and military equipment to support Ukraine's defensive needs. And with our coalition partners, we've also agreed significant further steps. First, that we will participate in US-led monitoring and verification of any ceasefire. Second, we will support the long-time provision of armaments for Ukraine's defence. And third, we will work towards binding commitments to support Ukraine in the case of a future armed attack by Russia. This is all about building the practical foundations on which peace would rest. But we can only get to a peace deal if Putin is ready to make compromises. And so we have to be frank. For all Russia's words, Putin is not showing that he's ready for peace. Over the last few weeks, we've seen the opposite. Further horrific strikes on Ukraine, killing and wounding civilians, and cutting off power for millions of people in the dead of winter. His forces hit a hospital in Kyiv just yesterday, and he's tried to distract from peace efforts with unfounded claims of attacks on his residence. Now, this only hardens our resolve. We will continue to step out our support for Ukraine's defence in 2026 to ensure it gets the equipment and backing it needs to continue the fight. And we will keep the pressure up on Russia, including further measures on oil traders and shadow fleet operators funding Putin's war chest. We will continue these efforts until they come to the table in good faith and until we realise the goal that we all share of a just and lasting peace. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Ladies and gentlemen, this new year is beginning exactly the way the old one ended. That's to say, with intensive peace diplomacy for Ukraine. And today's meeting of the Coalition of the Willing was a further step on this path towards peace. And so I'd like to start by thanking Emmanuel Macron for his hospitality here in Paris. And also like to thank both Emmanuel and Keir for preparing this meeting today, along with Volodymyr Zelensky. Because, ladies and gentlemen, today, in the triangle of Europeans, Ukraine and the United States, we have built on the progress that we achieved last year in Berlin. This is a shared success, and I'd also like to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the representative of the United States, and thank them and President Trump for their support in all this effort. We have the same strategic goal. First and foremost, we want to make sure that the weapons in Ukraine, after 4 years of war, be finally silenced. The country is on the verge of a humanitarian energy crisis, and therefore we are stepping up, in any case, our enormous efforts so as to reach a swift conclusion. Secondly, we want there to be a ceasefire, and unlike the Minsk Agreement of 2015, one based on strong security guarantees. And thirdly, as Europeans and Ukrainians, we want to ensure that we can shape this ceasefire together. Today we focused on the contribution that Europe and its partners after a ceasefire could make for Ukraine. As Coalition of the Willing, we will be shouldering our responsibilities. We want to help to make sure that in the future there are strong armed forces in Ukraine that constitute a credible deterrent for Russia through arming, training and funding. We will also take part in the monitoring of a ceasefire, and we will also make a contribution to strengthening Ukraine on land and the sea and in the air. With our partners in Washington, we agree for that certain conditions have to be met. Firstly, there needs to be strong legally binding security guarantees, including from the USA, and an American backstop to provide security European commitments. I'm very thankful that the United States has already said it'd be willing to do so. Secondly, the ceasefire has to be organized in such a way with Russia that the Coalition of the Willing can play an active role. We are actually working towards that. And thirdly, of course, all partners in the coalition have to go through their domestic processes to decide what contribution they will make. Germany will continue to support politically, financially and militarily. That could mean, for example, that after a ceasefire for the Ukraine in a neighboring NATO area, we would have a presence. As for the type and scope of a German contribution, obviously that has to be decided by the German government and parliament once these conditions have been specified and clarified. For me and for the German government, I would say that for the moment, nothing is excluded. As of now, in the 4th year of the war, Germany is Kiev's strongest supporter. And after a ceasefire, Germany will accept responsibility for the security of Ukraine and for the continent as a whole. We also discussed today how after a ceasefire we could promote the reconstruction of Ukraine. We are working on a package for that among European partners in close coordination with the USA. The President of the Commission today explained today how the Commission could contribute to that. And this reconstruction is indissociable from the question of security guarantees. Economic strength will be an indispensable guarantee for ensuring that in the future Ukraine can present a credible deterrent to Russia. So, dear Volodymyr, this also means certain expectations of Ukraine, as we've discussed in Brussels. Ukraine must make sure that its young men can find decent jobs in their own country rather than traveling to Germany, Poland or France. This is something that we have already discussed in Brussels together, and I think that this is an expectation that Ukraine can meet and will meet. So, ladies and gentlemen, no one can say today whether the arms will be silenced in Ukraine in 6 weeks or in 6 months, but we are working tirelessly towards that peace. We'll obviously have to make compromises. We will probably not be able to achieve the ideal of a perfectly designed peace, not as much as we would like, but we have to learn not from books, but from the existing geopolitical circumstances going forward in the next 3 months. We will go about this with perseverance, realism, and a clear view of what is best for Europe. That's to say, a stable ceasefire, strong security guarantees, and peace in Europe linking Ukrainians and Europeans that we formed together. So once again, thank you for this excellent meeting today. It really was worth coming together in such great numbers. Never happened before in the coalition of the willing. We've never had so many people in one room as we had today in Paris. And that shows clearly to Russia that they have to stop the war. There's no point continuing it, and as Coalition of the Willing, we are willing to work with Ukraine and the US to find a way through to permanent or stable peace in Europe. So all the best for Ukraine. Thank you very much.